Okay, Tuesday, 12th of November, 2024. So Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Travel Tuesday. Travel more. Travel. So the world, the UK, and Russia with the unglued Brit. So Jimmy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
World, UK, and Russia. Where is it going? What's happening? What do you think? And why Russia? Why not the UK? What do you think is happening in the world?
Well, at the moment we're living in a time where, of course, history is moving at 100 miles per hour at the moment. It's a very interesting time to be alive. We've just witnessed the re-election of Donald J. Trump, which, of course, is huge. It's huge, pretty exciting news, to be honest, and I think there's going to be a lot of developments coming out of America. Now, with regards to where I see Western Europe going at the moment, I think it's a bit of a grim forecast, especially considering, the Labour Party in the UK and all of the taxes that are being increased, and around about 9,700 millionaires looking to leave the UK for brighter pastures at the end of the year. So I think it's a bit of a grim forecast generally for, I would say, the UK, but more widely Western Europe. Whereas I think eastwards, again, where I'm sitting in Moscow, Russia, it would seem to me that, we're moving into a multipolar world now. And of course, there's an element of energy, opportunity, and growth here. That is just something that you have to see to believe with all of the new building and infrastructure projects that are happening here at the moment, and the way everything's happening. I mean, just generally, there's an atmosphere of growth across the board in Russia at the moment. So yeah, that's where we're at the moment, just generally. And back over to you.
Multipolar world? What do you mean by that? Can you tell me more, please? I did a video about this a few months ago now, I guess, talking about it very briefly, but what do you think? What do you see? What do you see happening there as well?
So, of course, the idea of a multipolar world is moving away from unipolarity, a unipolar world. Since World War II, of course, the US was really the only game in town, even throughout the Cold War. Let's face it, they were. And, of course, it's at this present moment in time, it seems that, of course, with the rise of China and the rise of India and all of the BRICS nations, of course, it would seem that we're moving into a multipolar world. And what it is the idea that, of course, there's not going to be one pole of power, one hegemon. There is going to be, of course, America, and they will still have they will still have a sphere of influence. I would say the Anglo sphere. I would say most of Western Europe. But of course, then you've got the rest of the world, your likes of Brazil, the likes of, let's say, maybe Argentina, though they've just pulled back with Milei. They're looking to go toward the dollar at the moment. Anyway, then you've got, of course, the Middle East and East Asia, which are all getting in on the BRICS. I think at the last BRICS Kazan conference, again, there were leaders from all around the world coming to Russia, and I think it was around about 42 countries in total attended. Of course, bearing that in mind, it would seem that now there's this whole new power, this whole new pole that's forming in the East, and it seems that there's a new sphere of influence. The world will no longer be ruled by one global hegemon. Instead, it will be multiple hegemons, and that's the direction that we're heading in.
You mean like regional powers?
Yeah, so it's going to be a bit like this, I would say. China, of course, cannot be ignored, and that's kind of the thing. Over the last 30 years, we've watched them go from a pretty backward nation to a very futuristic nation. Just looking at, say, videos from Chongqing or any of the cities in China, they are quite clearly ahead in every single way than comparative Western nations when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to building projects, when it comes to all of these things, technology. They've now moved, of course, from the low-end product market into the high-end. They're producing, of course, electric vehicles, EVs, as they're known in America. And it seems that, of course, they are now the world's factory. And similar to how Britain was at one point, we were the world's shipbuilder, of course. It's rising China. It is their time to, of course, be a huge power on the world stage, and that's the direction that we seem to be going in. A lot of people might not like it, though I'm a realist. I don't see things how I like to see them. I see things as they are, and that's the way that it is at the moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like to be pragmatic as well, down to earth with these things. And I remember hearing about things in history where the center of power over the past, say, 1,000 years, over the course of, say, 500 years,
Mm.
center of power of the world has shifted from Asia, Europe, and now shifting also to Asia as well. What do you think that means for Russia in general, and the UK as well, and I guess Europe? But what do you think, Russia and UK?
Well, it's a very positive thing for Russia, because of course, for the longest time since the 90s, going back to the 90s, when we look at, say, 90s Russia in general after the fall of the Soviet Union, all we saw was chaos, of course, tanks on the streets, and just out and out, just disorderliness and violence and crime and crumbling infrastructure everywhere, from a time that's gone. Though the Russia of 2024 is not the Russia of the 1990s. It seems that, of course, the government have brought this country back up off its knees. And that's the thing. What we're witnessing now is, again, a rising Russia, a stronger Russia, and an economy that is quite clearly doing very well for itself. And it's not just the Russian central bank saying that, that's also IMF figures that also report that, of course, they are now the country with the fourth largest purchasing power parity by GDP in the world. So, of course, when we see in figures like that, we now know that, of course, yeah, this isn't the Russia of the 90s anymore. And I think it really surprises people, to be honest, when I'm just filming stuff and I send it back to friends or family, or even put it on my YouTube channel. I do have actually a lot of British people back in Britain that are a bit like, wow, I did not expect that. They thought that it was just, bears on the streets, balalaikas, and just the typical BBC filter lens: cold, gloomy, dark, depressing, no summer, and drunkenness. But it's not that. It's not that at all. It turns out that. For the longest time of my life, I was lied to by the media. Yet when I actually arrived, I realised how wrong it was. And it turns out that no, Russia's not like that at all, and it's quite a fantastic place to live. So what does this all mean then for, of course, China and Russia, be it in their relationship? It's an interesting question, but it seems that, of course, with China on the rise, of course, Russia's kind of on the bandwagon in that respect. But of course, Russia are a huge military power and have a lot to offer in terms of their tertiary sector and their primary sector. And of course, China being the manufacturing superpower that it is, the relationship works quite well. So they have every reason to be friends. So, of course, in this part of the world, the Eurasian model of the world, it seems that, of course, with all these powers working together and seemingly conducively, we saw at BRICS Kazan 2024 that even India and China decided to get over their silly border issues. So, of course, they're pulling troops back from the borders, and they just want to make an agreement now and start getting on and start working together. So it seems that there's a lot more harmony the further east you go now. Of course, on the western side of Russia, as we know, that there's not at the moment. Though the further east you go, you notice a lot more harmony, a lot more balance, and a lot more cooperation working together. So, of course, it's really good to see that happening. Now, you did say, what about Britain? Well, it's an interesting one. What's going to happen with Britain? Because of course, Trump's just gotten into power. And I think this is fantastic. I think it's very good news for the world, good news for the West. It's a huge win. But of course, the thing is, it's just a matter of if he's learned from his previous mistakes, the people that he put into the White House in the past, and that's the thing: is he going to put those backstabbing traitors in, or is he actually going to put good people in? If he puts good people into power, fantastic. I have reason to believe that he will. But then, of course, what's going to happen with England with Keir Starmer at the helm? We saw only this week that we had David Lammy come out and say, "Oh, well done, Donald Trump. We're so happy." And then, of course, a tweet before talking about how we would protest him if he came to the UK because he's one of the bad people, with the funny mustaches. Can't say it on YouTube. Basically, it seems that the UK is in a bit of a pickle now because, of course, they were trying to interfere. It was election interference what the Labour Party were doing because they wanted to send 100 MPs over to Washington to interfere in the US election. So it's foreign interference in an election, So after that happened, you can kind of see that, of course, Trump's not exactly going to be, singing sunshine and rainbows for them, is he? So, of course, they're going to have to grovel, which I don't think Trump's going to bother with, or they're going to have to do something else, like put someone else, other people in power, perhaps. I don't know, but at the same time, I can't imagine Trump's going to be very favourable to them when it comes to future arrangements, deals, or anything like that. And why would he have reason to? There's no reason to be favourable to people that wanted to keep you out of power and send 100 MPs over to meddle in your elections. Like, that seems like quite an adversarial nation, if you ask me. It's not really in America's interest to have election meddling countries on your list of friends. So I don't think it's going to get off to a good start. And also in the UK, they haven't exactly been friendly to people that are tweeting mean things and putting things on Facebook, have they? They've been throwing elderly people who are angry into prison for voicing their opinion online, no matter what they say. That they might have said bad things, and I would agree that some of the things that they said were pretty bad. Should they have gone to prison? No, I don't think so. So, of course, again, with all of the values that the UK is espousing, such as locking people up for voicing their opinion, I don't think Trump's going to have much of a nice thing to say about the Labour Party. And I think really it's either going to go the good way or the bad way. It's either that Trump's just going to put them to the back of the queue, as Obama said during Brexit. He's going to put them to the back of the queue, or he's going to put a deal on the table where it's a bit like, right, you've got to change. You've got to start steering your policies in different ways that are more representative of a friendly nation that would be conducive with the United States. So we're going to have to see what happens. There are different paths, of course, but it seems like those are the paths that are going to be taken. I think for the United States in general, I think they're going to have a good 4 years. I'm quite optimistic. The UK, not so much, not so much at all, to be honest. I think it's just going to be the same of the same, controlled decline nonsense from above. So yeah, optimistic about the US, but not so much the UK.
Mhm. You said earlier lies, and also used the word harmony. Harmony, because I remember there was a big dispute between India and China about the border in the north. And I think, in the grand scheme of things, that's a small little thing compared to what a more conducive relationship would be and the results and the fruit that would be born from it in the future, like what happened in Kazan, onwards and upwards. But you also used the word lies in the UK. Now, I don't know what's going on in the UK. I've not been following the news at all. I heard something about the budget. That's I heard about this tweet as well. But what do you mean lies? Because also I saw some tweets that implied that a lot of the European countries and power elites were a little blindsided as to what happened in the election. What do you think? Lies, strong word.
So, well, with what seems to be going on, I think especially with yeah, the old guard of say Europe and whatnot, and also yeah, the Labour Party in general, that's currently ruling in the UK. It seems that they're going for a controlled decline approach, where it's controlled decline of the nation. Even when you're there, you can notice when you're on the streets, say an element of disheartening of the people, a general misery in the air whenever I visit. And there's this sort of there's this when you ask people if it's going to get better or worse, there seems to be this overwhelming. It's going to get worse before it gets better, which is quite concerning, to be honest. Again, if you just ask the general people, and I think I understand it because there's nobody representing them at the moment. There's nobody representing the actual native British people, who of course are the hard-working, tax-paying backbone of the nation. I mean, even the Labour Party, I think, what are they in on 20% of the vote at the moment? So again, they're not really in on a true democratic mandate. It was 20% of the population support, which means that there's an entire 80% out there that either didn't vote or just would never vote for them. So the situation I think on the ground is, yeah, quite miserable in that respect because, yeah, you've got a party that's in, but they certainly do not represent the British people at all. In fact, they have quite a disdain for the British people, and they're not scared to point it out, say, whenever you catch a little tweet from them online or whatever. So I think what you're dealing with at the moment is just again a serious disheartened population. Will it change with the election of Trump? I don't know. What worries me though, I was watching a video from Morgoth's review the other day, and what he was talking about was will Britain become a woke North Korea? Have you seen that video?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So, of course, that's it was a very interesting one. Morgoth's review. Will Britain become a woke North Korea? But there's a point to it, and his point is that the Labour Party either keep grovelling and try and maintain this relationship because, again, as part of the Anglosphere, they need to have this open relationship with America. Okay. However, because they are ideologically backward people, and quite regressive, in fact, it would seem that what they are going to do is they are most likely going to double down on everything. So everything that you're seeing now, they're just going to double down and just say, all right, then, well, if you don't want to be friends with us, then we've got to stick to the ideology because then there might be a bit of a crossroads where they either take the left turn or the right turn or something like that. So they either say we can ditch all this woke stuff, maybe get on the Trump train, or they can really double down. But as we've seen time and time again, it's very, very hard for these seriously ideologically embedded people that are in all of the institutions in the United Kingdom in high places to just turn on a dime and say, yeah, we're just going to ditch all the woke stuff. So again, I don't think it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows for Britain in that respect. I think the chances are Donald Trump's going to fly over to countries to visit Orban, or of course he's going to go to places like Poland. He's going to be going to Eastern Europe and Serbia even. I doubt that he's going to be visiting the UK in this and having the same handshakes and friendship in the way that he did in the past. So I think that again, people are going to be looking past. So they're going to be flying over the Atlantic, but over most of Europe until Western Europe pulls itself together a little bit.
So Western Europe pulls itself together.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. Yes, I remember seeing a tweet a few days ago. A lot of people in different countries in Europe thought the election would go different ways, and they were completely blindsided. So I just feel that a lot of people, places, maybe organizations in Europe, are perhaps misleading a lot of the people of
Mm.
the country and not giving the full picture of what's happening or what's happening in reality or in general. A lot of misdirection for whatever reason. That's what it seems to be. And Also in the UK, I'm really curious. I heard something about this budget, some controversy about that. And is that good for
Uh,
Britain? 'Cause I've not been following the news at all. But is what's happening there on the ground good? Good enough? Anything? What do you think?
it's terrible. Well, I mean, it's terrible for the people that you don't want it to be terrible for.
Yeah.
So, of course, I follow Jeremy Clarkson a lot because I love Jeremy Clarkson. And now he's been tweeting a lot. He's furious, absolutely furious about the budget because what Rachel Reeves has actually done with this budget, she's deliberately gone on the attack of farmers. So basically, she's made it incredibly difficult now for, let's say, for instance, because a farm generally. A farmer, especially in the United Kingdom, is not earning much, not earning much at all. It's literally diddly squat, to take that phrase. So, of course, they're not earning much at all. And that puts them in a position, because they're not earning much, where they're asset rich, but they're cash poor. So they'll have all the equipment, they'll have the house, they'll be able to do the job and keep somewhat of a function in life. However, again, them being asset rich but cash poor puts them in this position where once someone dies, let's say the owners of the farm die, what's going to happen is they won't be able to hand it down to their children. Because the tax on them is going to be so burdensome that it's deliberately designed so that there's going to be either a big corporate buyout of that farm or the government are going to buy it off them. In fact, I heard the other day there's also a government farm buying scheme where you can sell your farm directly to the government. Now, I think we heard about what happened during the Soviet Union, didn't we? When, of course, the government wanted to come in and obtain the means of production and went after the farmers. It seems like that on a light level in a way. So they're coming after the farms, and it's an interesting one. I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but you kind of have to in this case. It would seem to me that they want to take control of the food supply, because, of course, right now, let's imagine this. Now, if they wanted to, there's two things. If they wanted to perform either of these things, they can't at the moment. So if they wanted to create a manufactured famine or something like that, they can't do it because small farmers exist, and you can still your food's kind of decentralized, so to speak. But what happens when your food's centralized, into big hands? So let's say there's going to be 5 big hands which own everything in the end. Then of course they can all coalesce together with how they are going to, of course, cause such things to happen, a new current thing, so to speak. And it's also an issue for the Dutch, it's also an issue for the French, and there's also this idea as well, again, going back to UN Agenda 2030. Now, with that agenda, of course, they would like it where basically they could buy all of these farms, they cut down meat production because apparently cows are bad for the environment, and then, of course, they can turn these into cricket farms, and they can turn them into, of course, these massive, vertical farms that are all indoors and whatnot. So they want to destroy traditional farming and, just normal farming as it was always known. And they want to, of course, take control of all these farms. Firstly, to take away the power from people and decentralization of food. So that it can all be centralized, because again, if you can control the food supply, you can control the people, and that's the whole point of it. So, and also, they're also doing this in other ways. They're also sending out forms. So if you own any chickens in the UK, if you're just a chicken owner, you've got 2 chickens, you need a license for those chickens, mate. You need a license for your chickens. Americans often laugh at the Brits because they always go, "You got a license for that license, mate." And it's true, because you need a license to have chickens in the UK now. So you've got to sign, say how many that you've got, and I take it pay somebody to own your own chickens. So again, it's it's looking dark. I mean, from a historic perspective, what they're doing, it seems a bit like a totalitarian tiptoe. Because again, now a lot of people can say, "Oh, that's a slippery slope fallacy," but again, if something keeps slipping down the slope, you expect it to keep slipping, right? That's my kind of thoughts about that. So, yeah, it's not looking good. I'll put it that way.
Well, follow the logic. If the ingredients are all there, then it could point that direction, and there's enough plausible deniability to suggest those things, which is interesting. But also, all this reminds me of that meme where soft people make hard times, and hard times make hard people, and hard people make good
Yeah.
times. But all of this, a lot of these things, the way the world is going, reminds me a lot of that meme and all the
Mhm.
fourth turn, generational shifts. And what do you think about all that?
Well, it's absolutely true, and of course, we're in the what I would describe as the final stages. Weak people making hard times again. You've got you have men dressing up as women in Western countries and fighting women instead of playing in their own sports, which Trump's bringing a ban on. Thank God. But at the same time, you look at that, and there's your weak men, and you also had a large contingent of the population in America, and these are grown men that voted for Kamala. Like just that statement alone, it's just bonkers, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, just the fact that you've got grown men that, of course, just I don't know, have their balls in someone else's knicker drawer somewhere and that sort of stuff happening, you start thinking to yourself, wow, okay, right, yeah, we're in the weak people era. And sometimes I don't like to be accelerationist, to be honest with you, but sometimes I do think perhaps the hard times are needed then to harden people up a little bit. Of course, they will come. The easy times don't last forever, and it seems that again that's why we're in the place that we're in at the moment, because we're watching again the slow decline of an old empire, and again a rise somewhere else. So again, a rising East, a rising China, and all that sort of stuff. And that's where we are today, and that's kind of the thing. You don't want to see your country do poorly, but sometimes I do think, just from a philosophical perspective, maybe it's good. Maybe the people need a bit of hard, so that they can harden up, so that they can again build something good later. And that's where I stand on it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. And you said earlier that the Russia of today is not the Russia of the 90s. And to go from that one extreme to another to change requires a lot of energy and movement and change and force and power to go from one extreme to another, and especially on short time spans, depending on things. That that's powerful. To go from one to another requires a lot of change, and it's not easy, but it's necessary. There's kind of like I want to say purging. It's a strong word, but it's very poignant to say getting rid of the weaknesses, so to speak, so you're stronger, both mentally, physically, individually, but also collectively as a society. That's quite powerful. And the short that time frame is, the more sudden, rapid changes are, and the more blindsided some people could be, and more amazed or surprised at what's happening. That's powerful. But when these things do happen, I think then they're essentially in the early stages of a revolution for the better, depending on a few of the decisions here and there. And I think once you solve a lot of those the more fundamental the problem of the society that's solved,
Hmm.
the more that ripple effect, the greater that ripple effect is in other aspects of the society, of the country, of the place. It affects other things, infrastructure, investment, tourism, you name it. And then we could even go into the realms of saying this is the start of the golden age. But we'll only truly know, that's for future historians, we'll only truly know in 20, 30, 40 years from now. But that, again, follow the logic. If these fundamental shifts happen,
Hmm.
right, the right shifts, the right movements and changes here and there, right? Policies, culture, identity, ideas, culture, whatever else, values, then it's a potential golden age, which is powerful. And then I guess the question then will be identifying it and riding that wave for your
Yes.
own benefit. But that's the $1 million question. That's an international question to ask and to answer.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of which, that's kind of the thing because even during World War II, there was loads of death and destruction. But if you were in Argentina at the time, you would have felt pretty good. You would have been like, "What war? What are you talking about? There's a world war on. I don't know. I'm just in Argentina, just liking this mountain range over here, you know." And but of course, times have changed. They've had their hard times, and I think a lot of the world that once had good times has had its hard times. Let's take, for instance, even Poland, even Russia, all of the former Soviet nations, pretty much. Like taking Russia for an example, that's kind of the thing. They had their hard times a lot more recent than we had hard times in Britain. So, of course, in Britain, the last time we had hard times was probably the Blitz, I would assume. Real hard times.
Oh,
So,
okay.
of course, we've generally been on an upward trajectory since then. Of course, you had 1979, the Winter of Discontent.
Yep.
But again, that's just one winter. Now, Russia pretty much had over a decade of hard times, and by hard times, I mean, you know, you're talking mafia on the streets, you're talking continuous crime, you're talking again some serious crime. You know, guns, knives, weapons all over the streets, and just chaos. Imagine that for over a decade. So, of course. It's you know that it's in a state now where there are a lot of people alive today here that remember that time and say, you know what, we don't want to go back there. We don't want to go back there. And that's, again, why we've got order, cleanliness, low crime rates now, and everything's back on the up and up. And that's kind of the thing. It's the same story in Poland. You know, if you ask especially Polish people in Poland of a certain age, and if you talk to them about how it was, you know, during the end of the USSR and then moving into the 90s, it wasn't a good place, empty shells, and all of this sort of stuff, and they talk about a time that they never want to go back to. And of course you see them rising as a people because, again, when you've hit rock bottom, you have nowhere but up to go. And that's the thing. I think in Britain, we were riding high at one point. I mean, even back before Tony Blair, before the Tony Blair era, the Margaret Thatcher era, you know, while a lot of people were suffering around the planet in the 80s, you know, in Britain, we were riding high, we were partying, you know. But I think I liken it to a five-star hotel, but it's an old five-star hotel. You know, it's like an old five-star hotel that it earned its 5 stars back in the 70s and 80s, and you know, it still has a name for itself. But again, you go in and you see the old 90s carpet there, and it's a bit like ugh, and you know, you see a bit of dust on the cupboards and a few cracks in the walls that haven't been repaired, but it still has its 5 stars outside. And of course, you know, since then, of course, many modern, new, beautiful hotels have been built around this hotel. But you know, they're not going to improve their hotel because it's like, oh, we've been great for decades. Why would we ever need to? But of course, they're just not looking. There are big, beautiful, modern, sexy hotels being built at the moment around that, you know, a lot of people would rather stay at than, you know, the old brand, well, the old legacy brand hotel just down the street. Again, that's a bit old, dusty. Yeah, we all know now it's had its heyday, so to speak. So, yeah, speaking of a golden age, moving into a golden age. That's the thing. I think a lot of the planet will, but I don't think it's going to be Western Europe. I somehow think they're going to have a bad decade ahead, like a stagnant one, so to speak, just stagnant. You know, not insane growth like we see, you know, in the likes of South America, or we see in the likes of Russia, China, East. You know, even in parts of Africa, you look at Rwanda now, and you see how that place has improved. Like it was it was a backwater for pretty much the whole of its existence, and now you look at the streets and it's beautiful. So you're watching the rest of the world being like, yep, we want to go on this upward direction. We don't have any ideological leanings. We're not woke. We just want to build and do the best for our citizens. And you're seeing a lot of the world go in that direction now, and it's an exciting journey that the rest of the world's on, as opposed to the old legacy brand countries, as is often put by nomad capitalist.
Exactly, yeah. Coasting on their past successes, in neutral. And it seems that the worse things get, like a coil, like a spring, the worse things get, the harder the spring into the opposite, into the high quality, into the golden age. It seems to be that case. That's interesting. And you said something interesting as well. I'm trying to remember now. Oh yeah, UK. Back in April, I did a video on the 23rd of April, St. George's Day. I was in Ireland and I was in this nice little church, little garden doing a video. I remember explicitly. It was a nice place. And I remember talking about that I realized and kind of felt that the UK sacrificed culture for wealth in the 70s. Early 80s, let's say, Margaret Thatcher, around
Yeah.
that time. Because I noticed since then that the UK is a great place to export to. Nice cash cow economy to export to. Import, yeah, I guess different story, but export, if you're living in the third world, for example, and you're having an online business then selling to the UK
Yeah.
because of the conversion rate, it's damn good business. Even, well, in most places in the world, the pound is stronger. Euro, dollar, you name it, the pound is really strong. So it seems that the UK has sacrificed culture for wealth. And I
Yeah.
kind of thought the UK with regards to people's attitudes, how they behaved, how they thought, but they were generally materially well off. But they
Hmm.
lacked certain cultures, the closest word I can think of, a national identity, so to speak, cohesiveness, high trust society, things like that. So it seems in the world there's a nice balance. You can have
Hmm.
culture or you can have wealth. I guess you could have both, and there'd be some clever, nuanced way between the two. But I guess if you've seen hardships, you've seen destruction or decay of the world around you, I don't know to say that's a big push. Once you've seen that horribleness, then you want to
Hmm.
get and then you could say you need that hard time to improve, to know what's important. We don't need these ideas or these luxury ideas and these concepts, this ideology or this and that and that and this. We need this. We need this down to earth solution. We need this creativity. We need that. We need this. We need this policy and that policy, whatever else. And then I think just through like a trial and error on a nation state level, who's got it right? You could say, well, look at the top 10 economies by any metric, top 20 by any metric, and what do they all have in common? And that's more than likely, on average, a winning policy. That's a very pragmatic way of seeing it, I think. And I think Western Europe is very bureaucratic. Again, it's that coil again. Things a bit chaotic and uncertain, and then to compensate, but overcompensating with
Hmm.
bureaucracy, with rules and regulations. That's also, I think, why in some way UK was quite good because it was easygoing, straightforward. But in some places, the fintech, for example, very integrated, very straightforward. But other places, other countries, a bit more obscure, a lot of rules and regulations, not as easy to get started, a little difficult. What do you think to that?
Well, I think that there's a lot to be said for that. In fact, because just going back to when you mentioned about say rules and regulations, I think that's the problem that the UK is currently facing. Because again, it seems that there's a rule and a regulation for everything, and again. The UK has very almost ancient at this point regulatory bodies that have basically been in charge for the longest time, and they have no so we've got to put ourselves in the shoes of the people that are in power. They have little to no reason to scrap any of those regulations to make them more competitive or agile in the modern economy, because again, a lot of those regulators are also people. They are the people that issue the licenses, and again, they've got to keep funding them, and it's almost a vicious cycle in a way, because it only demands expansion, these regulatory bodies, because of course more people, more businesses or whatever, more expansion of regulation, more things could go wrong. So we need more staff, we need to be funding this thing more, and it just continuously expands the state out until it eventually collapses in on itself. In fact, it's throughout history, back when we had the Dutch Empire, of course, there was a point during the Dutch Empire where they used the cheap, under-regulated Brits to build their boats for them. So, of course, because they had this overburdensome state, that, of course, meant that, Dutch people are too expensive, there's a lot of regulation for shipbuilding, well, just send it over to Britain. So we were basically the China of Europe at one point for shipbuilding and all those other activities, steelworks and all that. And that's kind of the thing. We were cheap and we were unregulated, so we could just do it, and we just did it without all of this burdensome health and safety and everything. Now, of course, do I think there are some good aspects of health and safety? Yeah, of course, absolutely. But at the same time, with the lack of regulation, the lack of departments, and just industrialists saying, yeah, let's build a factory, yeah, let's just do it. There was that kind of atmosphere back then of, yeah, we can just do things. Whereas I think it was after, World War II, we started having all of these departments of bureaucracy and departments of regulation just popping up all over the place to regulate pretty much every single aspect of someone's life. Whereas, again, that's what China pretty much did to America, because now, of course, Trump complains about it a lot, how, of course, all the American manufacturing has gone off to China. But again, they're the cheaper people. History just keeps repeating itself, and nobody learns from history, it seems. So, of course, the Chinese are cheaper, they're less regulated, you just go over there and, you just sign on the dotted line, you send all your work, and before you know it, you've got a product that's considerably cheaper and still good quality, that's coming from China instead of the United States now. And that's basically what's happened. So they are becoming a bit more protectionist. I understand there will be under Trump, which is fine, but it doesn't stop the inevitable rise, and it won't stop, again, more business moving east over time. Because now a lot of people complain about this, even in Britain. You'll hear people say, oh, yeah, all of this stuff from China, we shouldn't buy it. But it's like, oh, really? So we should make it all in Britain again? Well, there's a reason. There's a reason for everything. No one ever thinks about the reason. People move to these countries. They move off to your Indonesias, your Vietnams, and they move off to China or wherever, because of the overburdensome regulation and the overtaxation of businesses that basically guarantees that the hard workers will pay more, and the basically losers are going to receive all that the hard workers work for. So again, that's the thing. People that want to succeed and aspire to succeed in life, they end up just leaving. Again, even medical professionals, they just move off to Australia where they get paid what they should be paid for their jobs, So that's the state of affairs at the moment. So, nobody wants to buy stuff from China, but everybody wants to buy stuff from AliExpress and China at the same time. Because everyone wants the cheap doodad, basically.
Makes sense. And capital goes where it's treated best. People go where they're treated best.
Yep.
Dutch were outsourcing before outsourcing was a thing. And all this bureaucracy, it reminds me of the book, The Road to Serfdom, with regards to overburdensome rules and regulations in the state. But we got about a minute or two or three left. Is there anything specific, any message, any concept, any idea you want to share with the audience in the final few minutes? Anything in general?
Well, I think that really there is an air of optimism, because I think with Trump's second term, I think there's every reason to be quite optimistic about, again, the future of the United States. I think that if only on the basis that he puts the right people in the right places and does all the right things, I think we could be in for quite a prosperous 4 years ahead, and we could witness a lot of change if he does everything right this time around and knows what mistakes he made last time. But I think I have a reason to be optimistic about the US. With the East, again, things are rising in general. I think that there's, at the moment, there's every reason to be optimistic for parts of the West and parts of the East. I think that, yeah, we are going to be going in quite an upward trajectory. There's going to be speed bumps, but again, I think that we've got a very interesting decade ahead, to say the least. So, for all of those, I would say black pillars, as the term is often used, I'd say fear not. I think that, we're currently in a stage where a lot's changing, and a lot's not going toward the globalist plan for humanity, which is marvelous in my opinion. And I think that, yeah, there's a whole wide world out there, and it's great to go and experience it and see it for yourself, if not Russia, beyond, and carving out your piece of the pie wherever you are, basically. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Travel more, see more of the world, do stuff. Every single day, the world in its own small way gets better and better,
Yeah,
better and better. And it's self-evident because the world is better than it was 15 years ago and 30 years ago. Technologically, materially, you name it, generally getting better. And I think 15 years from now, things will be a lot different. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Things will be different, subtly and noticeably. But 30 years from now, the world will be different in ways we can't even imagine right now, and in ways that we think will be insane or crazy. Whatever you think will be a crazy, outlandish idea today, within reason, possibly, of course, could be reality 30 years from now. And that's exciting. Same time.
yeah. So depending on where you are, you've got a lot to look forward to. That's what I will say. There are big developments ahead. Keeping track of them, yeah. Just that's all I'll say though. Yeah, it's what a time to be alive. You can look at it in the negative and worry about the negative, but if you're proactive, hardworking, there's a whole world out there for you. And you know,
Without doubt.
the world
But
is your
otherwise,
oyster.
the world is your oyster, yeah. But otherwise, let's slowly end the lesson, end the session. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. You will see me tomorrow.
Brilliant. Right. Take care, Adrian.
Bye for now. Bye bye.